بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى أصحابه أجمعين. Dear brothers and sisters, I have taken an article from al-ibana.com exposing and refuting the deviant Yusuf Al-Qaradaawee, and it seems that as time goes on, his deviations grow stronger and stronger. So just to begin quickly here, he has taken some really strange positions, and we'll start with his position towards the disbelievers. Al-Qaradawee toned down and eradicated the fundamental doctrine of association and disassociation, al-wala' wal-bara', towards the disbelievers. What follows are some of his statements. First, and this is really astonishing, he said about the Christians, quote, "All of the issues that exist between us are common. We are all sons of one country, our destiny is one, our nation is one. I say about them that they are our Christian brothers, but some people condemn me for this. How can I say that they are our Christian brothers when Allah says, verily, and this is in bold, verily the believers are only brothers. Yes, we are believers, but they too are believers from another perspective. They too are believers from another perspective." So he believes the Christians are our brothers and they are believers from another perspective. Number two, in the same program, he said about the Coptic Christians, they put forth thousands of martyrs for the various beliefs. Number three, he said, there is nothing wrong with a Muslim loving a non-Muslim. There is nothing wrong with a Muslim loving a non-Muslim. Number four, he said, the enmity that exists between us and the Jews is only due to land, not due to religion. Not due to religion. He stated that Allah's saying, quote, "You will find the most severe in enmity against those who believe are the Jews and the pagans," is with regard to the circumstances at the time of the messenger, and it does not apply now. And this is in spite of the fact that he uses the last part of the same ayah as proof for the Christians' close relation to the Muslims today. This is such that he says, if the Muslims flourish, their Christian brothers also flourish, without doubt. And if the Muslims deteriorate, the Christians too deteriorate. He also stated in several places that Islam, according to his perception, respects the distorted religions. And all of the evidences and references of what he says are in the article, so I'll post the article in the info section, inshallah. And he stated, continuing, and he stated that they are like Muslims. They share what is for them as well as what is against them, and that there are common grounds between Muslims and Christians. He also stated that Islam focused on the points of commonality between us and them and not on the points of contention. And he said that the Muslims must stand together with the Christians in one row upon those common grounds against atheism, oppression, and tyranny. He also mentioned that jihad is for the defense of all religions and not just Islam. He permitted congratulating them on their holidays and sanctioned their eligibility for positions in the government and ministries. Number 6, he also stated that jizya is taken from those under the rule of Muslims in exchange for their lack of defending the country, but as for today, it is removed from them since military service is mandatory and applies to both the Muslim and the disbeliever. Second, his stance towards the innovators. When Al-Qaradawee speaks against innovation, you find him speaking out against an opponent that doesn't exist. So he speaks out against the Mu'tazila and the Khawarij of old, but yet at the same time he praises their modern day offshoots. As for the Rafida, who inherited the beliefs of the Mu'tazila and added more grotesque and bizarre views to it, of which the least of them is enough to associate them with the likes of Abu Jahl, then you find him defending them and fraternizing with them. In fact, he even regards inciting any conflict with them as an act of treachery against the Ummah. And he considers their cursing of the companions, their distortion of the Quran, their beliefs that their Imams are infallible, and their pilgrimage to the grave sites, among other things, as marginal oppositions to creed. Marginal oppositions to creed. He also made similar statements about today's successors to the Khawarij, who are the Ibadiyya. And according to him, the Ash'aris and the Maturidis are from Ahl Sunnah, and there is no room for argument about this. Third, his stance towards the Sunnah. Al-Qaradawee follows the course of the rationalists in subjecting the Sunnah to their limited intellects and corrupt understandings. As a result, he rejects some of it while misinterpreting other parts of it that do not conform to his desires. The following are some examples of his statements with regard to the Sunnah. First, it is authentically reported in Sahih Muslim in marfu' form that the Prophet ﷺ said, "Indeed, my father and your father are in the fire," and the scholars unanimously agree on this. Al-Qaradawee said, "I say, what is the sin of Abdullah bin Abdul Muttalib, meaning the father of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, such that he is from the inhabitants of the hellfire, when he is from the people of Fitrah, and the correct view with regard to them is that they are saved." Number 2, it is authentically reported in the two Sahih collections in marfu' form that the Prophet ﷺ said, "Death will be brought in the form of a handsome ram." Al-Qaradawee said, quote, "From that which is known and certain, and which conforms to the intellect and the texts, is that death is neither a ram, nor a bull, nor any other type of animal." End quote. Number 3, it is authentically reported in the Sahih collection in marfu' form that the Prophet ﷺ said, "A people that entrust their leadership to a woman will never succeed." Al-Qaradawee said, quote, "This is restricted to the time of the Messenger ﷺ, in which leadership was predominantly monopolized by men, but as for today, then no." Number 4, it is authentically reported in the Sahih that the Prophet ﷺ said, "I have not seen women deficient in intellect and religion more able to change the mind of a determined man more than one of you." Al-Qaradawee said, this statement was made by the Messenger ﷺ as a joke. Number 5, it is authentically reported in the Sahih that the Prophet ﷺ said, "A Muslim should not be killed by a disbeliever." After affirming that a Muslim can be killed by a disbeliever, in opposition to the Hadith, Al-Qaradawee said, "This is a view of which it is not befitting in our time to follow other than it, and by us favoring this view we are nullifying the excuses and raising the banner of the Islamic legislation." And there are many more examples besides this. Fourth, his stance with regard to women. Al-Qaradawee works to tear apart the veil of those women who observe the hijab by any means he is capable of. He has announced repeatedly that separating the men from women in lecture programs is an innovation, and that it is from the customs that are not part of Islam, and that we must tear down the barrier that exists between women and men. He said, in quote, "Unfortunately, I am in my 70s and I go to America to participate in Islamic conferences, but the lectures in these conferences are held with the women on one side and the men on another side. So sternness has overcome the organizations there, and they have forced customs on the Western community itself to the point that they have followed the stricter views whilst abandoning the more favorable views. So this has resulted in men having their own gathering place apart from the gathering place of women." In the same event, he also said the following, "Even though the likes of these conferences can serve as an opportunity for a young man to see a young girl, be impressed with her and ask about her, and perhaps Allah will open their hearts, and the end results of this will be the formation of a Muslim family." In the same program, when a man introduced him for a lecture that was specific for women, he said, quote, "I said to the introducer, 'What are you doing here? Shouldn't one of the sisters be in your place instead of you, since the topic is specific for them? She should be the one introducing me, giving a few brief words, and taking questions. By doing this, we would be training them to be leaders. However, the men are always controlling the women, even in their own affairs." End quote. He also stated that Muslim women wearing the hijab should appear on television and satellite channels, and that women should participate in plays and theater. In fact, while calling to a modest form of intermingling, he even mentioned that he has two daughters that studied in universities in England and who graduated with doctorate degrees, one in nuclear physics and the other in biochemistry. Fifth, Al-Qaradawee and entertainment. Al-Qaradawee is regarded as one of the most prolific religious callers to music and entertainment. He asserts this in a number of ways. First, he states in many of his books that music is lawful and that movies are permitted and good. He mentions that he condemns these actors that withdrew from acting. And there's a long proofs and evidences and references for this, but I'm going to skip over that, and whoever is interested in that can turn to the article, inshallah. Number 3, he sends his blessings on actors that wear crucifixes, openly displaying them in order to appear like Christian armies. He concluded his allowing them to do this by saying, quote, "So proceed with the blessing of Allah, and Allah is with you, and He will never cause your deeds to go in vain." End quote. He mentions that he is a fan of the female singers Faiza Ahmed, Shadia, Kulthum, Fairuz, and others. He also mentions about himself that he follows movies, TV shows, and plays such as the movie Irhab and Kabab of Adil Imam, in which they make fun of practicing people, Dreamy Nights, Ra'fat al-Hajan,